Welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival and to Story Shop 2016 here in the Spiegel tent. My name is Rebecca and I work with the City of Literature Trust. Edinburgh was designated the first City of Literature in 2004, and since then the Trust has been working devotedly not only just to promote literature in all its many forms within the city, but to discover and nurture new and emerging writers, which is why we're here today. So it is with the greatest joy that I get to introduce you to today's Story Shop writer, Beth Cochrane. Beth recently completed an MSc in creative writing at the University of Edinburgh, where she also won the Sloan Prize in 2015 for her work in Scots. Since then, in her own words, she has currently been puzzling her way through her novel. And today she will be reading to us her story, Another Living Soul. So can everybody please join me in welcoming Beth Cochrane to the stage.
Another living soul. Share your silence, bring your voice. Marie had found the advert in the wanted section of her local newspaper, right next to the usual job ads for receptionists, piano teachers, joiners. Well, that's not particularly informative, she had thought. She heard her mother's voice in her head. Don't be picky now, you can't afford to be picky. And Marie hadn't become particularly fond of the bathrooms she'd been scrubbing recently. Her heart didn't fill at the prospect of scraping dried toothpaste from mildewed sinks. So she dialed the number underneath the advert and was promptly scheduled for an informal chat. The following Monday, she found herself interviewed, accepted, and beginning a new job. The man who hired her had not commented on any oddity when he led her from the interview room and into her new office, through the door of a greenhouse and into marbled warmth. He settled Marie at a desk within. The phone in front of you will ring, and you will talk to the caller. At 5 o'clock you can leave, but you must be back at your desk by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Understand? The man's expression had not changed from the minute they met, a small smile tilting the corners of his lips, only opening his mouth a fraction when speaking. Oh yes, that's fine. Marie nods a little frantically, enthusiastic smile cemented across her face. Stop that. You look like an idiot. Tone it down. Should I ask who the caller will be? She pauses for a millisecond and decides it's best to remain unquestioning. This is your escape from scrubbing bathroom tile mold. Don't ruin your chances. She settles into her chair and turns to thank the man who hired her, but he has already disappeared. And she sits in the greenhouse, leaning back in her chair behind a little white desk, telling herself, yes, this is all normal, and no, you don't really know what's happening, but it'll all work out and it'll be fine. The air feels synthetic, static, controlled by a temperature gauge, and men who had never set foot inside the glass. Sunlight falls to the tops of the tallest plants, dappling itself amongst the leaves, tears falling from the surface of the sun. The greenhouse, holding three rows of 4 desks, all occupied, does not smell like a greenhouse. No humidity, no smell of damp earth, or even a hint of pollen can be detected in the sunlit room. Instead, only the scent of warm plastic fills Marie's nostrils. The flowers, the ferns, the rows upon rows of herbs and the immaculately arranged leaves of vegetation, Marie realizes, are too military to be the work of nature, too uniform to be arbitrary will of photosynthesis. Rather, every leaf and tendril and trailing fern had been pressed into perfect moulds and left to set, each identical to the last, identical to one conforming mould. Underneath hanging baskets of fuchsias and pansies, Marie reaches upwards to feel the synthetic leaves between her fingers, smooth and soft as the cheek of a child's doll. The flowers above are all pinks and purples, brightening the sunlight that melts down to her. The fuchsias tumble over the basket, sweeping down and around and tangled in amongst one another, exhibiting their droplets of plastic pollen, startlingly white against that myriad of colours. A new Garden of Eden, available to be purchased at your local store. And beside the chair are potted rhododendrons, petals reflecting the harsh glare, an almost sickening shine, petals spilling over and over again, blood from a clogged artery, covered with phone wires that lead from her desk to an unknown source. The greenhouse filled with plants that can never grow taller and bloom to be more beautiful than they are now. A greenhouse of plants that can never wilt and feel their petals wrinkling into old age, but neither can they bloom brighter. But the phone hasn't rang yet, hasn't rang for the whole time that Marie has been sitting at her desk, looking at the plants in her hands. No one has moved from their desks all morning, and first day jitters stop Marie from breaking this unspoken rule. She stays behind her desk, beside the rhododendrons. She finds herself beginning to shift and fidget in her chair. She thinks of the makeshift bed in her friend's flat, dining table pushed back to the wall, and her camping bed in the middle of the floor. She stops fidgeting. It's 1:30 and Marie is hungry. Her co-workers haven't moved for their lunch breaks yet. Are they not starving by now? Occasionally a phone rings and is answered. Conversation lasting anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. Marie has not yet managed to catch a word of these conversations as her co-workers are spaced just far enough to be out of earshot. And now you're regretting asking who the callers will be, aren't you? It's going to be something you know nothing about. Financial advice, relationship advice, any kind of advice. But the man who hired her had not asked for qualifications, only a few simple questions about her life. Did she have any childhood pets? Were her parents kind to them? Did she read fairy tales as a child, and who, if so, did she admire most in them? A growl escapes her stomach, and she cradles her arms around herself as if she can stifle the sound. Hunched over her stomach, she grimaces and looks round to her co-workers, praying no one heard. Stop being a wimp, get your lunch. Marie dips into her handbag and brings out a sandwich. Ham, cheese and mustard. Marie has been eating the same sandwich for 4 years. It's a nice enough sandwich, and she wouldn't know what else to have if she wanted to change. But she didn't. Her co-workers remain motionless, occasionally raising this tilted arm to pick up a ringing phone, regardless of hunger or weariness. She unwraps her sandwich, hoping the rustling might arouse the attention of her co-workers. They don't move, so she coughs loudly. Still nothing. She bites down her sandwich. Ticks and tocks creep by. The clock keeps pulsing, and Marie has no phone calls that day. 5 o'clock comes and goes, yet no one moves. At 5:25, Marie bravely rises from her chair, picks up her handbag, and moves towards the door. She gives a half wave to her co-workers, who make no motion back, no sign they've even noticed her that day. She tries to summon indignation, rather than allowing the hurt to rise in her throat. It doesn't work, and she leaves the greenhouse, feeling like the new kid at school who no one wants to play with. The plants remain still, positioned exactly as they had been that morning, and await the new sun and the same old day. Marie returns at 8:57 next morning, settles her bag by her desk, and prepares to say good morning to the co-worker on her left. But at 9:01, she receives a phone call, and her heart begins to beat faster. Good morning, this is Marie at the Advice Centre? No one has told her the name of the company. It wasn't even in the newspaper advert. Maybe she would have noticed this lack of information if only someone had asked her about her new job. How her first day had been. Were her co-workers nice? Was the walk far from her temporary home? But no one had. Someone is breathing down the phone, but otherwise there is silence. How may I help you? Marie's heart continues to beat faster. She hears a deep breath in her ear. Hello. How are you? The breath is let go. I'm fine, I suppose. Thank you. Yourself? How may I help you today, sir? I'm good, thank you. Pause. Another deep breath. Just thought I'd call. His name is David. He's a gardener. He's divorced. He still loves his wife, but she's happy, living the single life in a small town outside Bristol, and has no interest in returning his calls. He had enjoyed walking his dog, Monty, that morning in the field by his house. Monty was tired afterwards, but had summoned enough energy to bark at a pigeon for some time when they got home. David got annoyed and hadn't given Monty a treat, but thought maybe after their evening walk he might relent. He thanks Marie for the chat, having asked her nothing about herself, and hangs up. So this is the job: conversation and comfort, and a soft place for the endless echoes to find home. Marie can do that. She exhales a long breath and settles back into her chair, her pulse having returned to a regular rhythm, and wonders why the man who hired her had been so vague. This job is exactly what she needs in her life, focusing on other people, being that ready ear, listening and understanding, and having that shred of empathy that so often lacks in life. All the decent money finally coming in would soon afford her own place, someplace small and unassuming, but her own. No one turns to congratulate her on her first phone call. No one moves, same as yesterday. Marie, not for the first time, thinks them odd, and her shoulders bow under the weight of loneliness. She hopes silence is a good sign, that snatches of her conversation had been heard and thought adequate. The woman in front of her is wearing the same blouse as the previous day. Marie's almost sure of it, and now she thinks of it, most of her co-workers are wearing the same outfits as the day before. Purple blouse, collared blue shirt, dull green cardigan. Unsure of her memory, she pushes this thought to the back of her mind. Maybe once she's settled in and more ease in her surroundings, she'll go talk to one of them. You're such a wimp, Marie. I hope you know that. Too much time in the company of bathroom sinks. That's your problem. She waits by the phone, admiring the faux fuchsias and ferns and other flora that she can't identify. She loses herself amidst the contortions of sunset purples and pinks and oranges, fires of reds and whites and reds. There are no more callers again that day, and the ringing of her co-workers' distant phones barely disturbs her. When she gets up at 5 o'clock that day, she feels stiff, her joints creaking into action. She thinks she'll take her walk around the greenhouse tomorrow after lunch to stretch her legs. One of her co-workers acknowledge her exit, and she cares a little less than the day before. The days pass by and Marie gets more phone calls. A woman from Liverpool whose son never visits, a lady from Dorset who has broken her leg on a skiing trip, a man from Argyll who hates his neighbours. After a while, the calls start to blend into one. Ex-lovers and lovers and drugs and dogs and vegetable gardens. Marie listens and okays and and everything will be fine in all the right places, nodding her head alongside the noises her mouth makes. Men with no love, men with too much love, and women with boring jobs, women caught in the midst of family arguments. And women with no love, too much love, love men with boring jobs, men in the midst of family arguments, dogs with no names and missing cats, and cake recipes where something isn't quite right but no one's quite sure what's missing. Marie forgets to take her walks and passes 9 to 5, rusting behind her desk. After all, having a job and a desk to sit behind is something to be thankful for, right? She sometimes forgets she's in a greenhouse. The fuchsias ignore the steady pace of time and its companions, age and decay, but remain pink and white and shining. Yet they recede further into the background of Marie's daily life. She slowly forgets they're there, in front of her, beside her, behind her. The intention to reach out to her co-workers also fades. After a few days of gathering the courage to get up, walk over to a desk, and make conversation, she realizes she doesn't want to. Her limbs are too heavy, her joints too unyielding to rise from her chair. The others never speak, which makes Marie believe that maybe conversation is not encouraged. Come in at 9 a.m, leave at 5 p.m. No strings and no distractions from the phone calls. Completely professional, humanitarian work. After a month, she accepts this. After 2 months, she forgets about her co-workers. The plastic of the plants has stopped reflecting in her eyes, and she gazes at the phone on the desk endlessly, waiting for the next call. 5 o'clock comes and goes, but still Marie won't stop staring. People may need her. They need to talk to another human being, another living soul. And if she isn't there, who will they have? One day she stays so late that she falls asleep. She wakes up the next morning and returns to staring at the phone. The fuchsias are a darker purple today. There is rain pattering on the glass roof and the clouds cover the sun, stealing the sheen that usually distorts the plastic leaves and petals and buds of the plants that remain motionless. Marie doesn't notice. She doesn't notice the phone on her desk looks darker beneath the clouds and winter's tentative touch, coming out of the dying autumn. And her muscles seize up and pin her to her chair, refusing to be subjected to movement. She allows herself to forget her life, the divorce, the breakdown. She forgets about earning money for her time, for exchanging her breath for cold, sterile cash. Forgets saving and storing and wishing for things that she'll never have. By 5 o'clock that night, Marie's joints have rusted and creaked into the position where they rest on her desk. Apart from her right arm, the arm she uses to answer that phone, she remains motionless. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Beth. What a thought-provoking and undeniably unsettling story. Yeah. So if you want to hear from any of our writers in the coming days, we will be here every day in the Spiegel tent at 3 p.m, right up until the end of the festival. And before everybody goes, I just want to draw attention to this being Story Shop's 10th anniversary. And we would really appreciate it if we could hear from people, back from you lovely people, whether you've been to Story Shop before or this is your first time attending. If you could let us know what it is that you love about Story Shop on the cards, on the table. Well, we've provided cards and pencils, so yeah, if you could, that would be lovely. And thank you all for coming, and hopefully we'll see you in the coming days at the festival. So thanks, guys.